Hey, it's Jeremy from Jeremy.net. I am a comic book artist, writer, creator, and I share my creative process here with you online. If you'd like to support this channel and enjoy the videos that I produce, please go to my Patreon and support my channel. Subscribe there. You can go to patreon.com/GERIMI. If you'd like to see what I'm up to the rest of the month when I'm not here making videos, you can sign up for my newsletter. Go to newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you'd like to buy physical copies of my comics, or if you read digitally on Amazon Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. Okay, so we are we're continuing to work on my comic book Morningstar. I'm working on the final issue, and I've got some digital layouts going. I see you've already got folks in the chat. We see Gaming Artists is here. How you doing, man? See Lego Studios and Aleski's in the chat. How you doing? Thanks for dropping by. If you guys have any questions, feel free to chime in. I'll be drawing, talking. Sometimes I get a little bit of a rant, and I may forget to check the chat for a little while, but I will always try to come back to it every so often. So, right now, one thing that was on my mind at the start, and it's not necessarily something that I had planned to talk about for the entire episode unless people are interested in talking about it, but let's see, is finding the right level of detail for rough layouts, or honestly finding the right level of detail for you personally depending on what you're working on. Gaming Artist asks how I'm doing. I'm actually doing well. I am very fortunate that my day job is allowing everyone from my company to work from home, so I'm continuing to work. My wife and I are staying home. My wife already worked from home, so it's very convenient. We're both home together all day now, which is actually very nice because, for the past year, our schedules have felt so busy that we didn't get as much quality time together as we wanted. So things are actually it's unfortunate that the world's in the state that it's in, but for us personally, we're at least getting to weather it together. And I think being with the people you love and people you care about this time is very important. So that's one small bright spot in what's going on in the world right now. Gaming Artist also asks, I'm new here, what is Morningstar about? Well, Morningstar is, it's Lucifer's fall from heaven, but it's told as a Western. So the idea is, at the dawn of creation, the universe is a raw, untamed frontier. It's a Wild West. There's 7 archangels that are like the Magnificent Seven, and Lucifer actually starts off as their leader. He's the marshal of heaven. Because we all know how Lucifer ends up, but we rarely see the story of how he gets there. So the idea of my story is to show how he goes from being the brightest of the bright to the darkest of the dark. And in fact, if you sign up for my aforementioned newsletter, there's a download that you can get for free, and it's a sketchbook of the first 3 issues of Morningstar. So the idea of the sketchbooks is that because it takes me a while to get my issues done, I actually letter all of my layouts. For instance, if I take this page I just finished, well, I finished it a little while ago, but I do not want to delete it. I want to unlock it, and I want to drag it to the top, and then I want to put the opacity back to 100, and let's flip this back. So what I do is, while I'm actually inking my finished pages, as soon as I have all of the pages with my rough layouts, I publish a sketchbook. And the sketchbook is basically just what you see here. It's my lettered layout. So you can read the story and see what's going on and get caught up. Meanwhile, while I'm busy taking however long it takes me to ink. But anyway, sign up for the newsletter. There'll be a download for the first 3 issues in the sketchbook form. But as I mentioned, you can get the go back out to, as I mentioned at the top, if you go to Amazon, you can pick up the trade of the first 4 issues. Issues 5, 6, and 7 are available directly from my website, which is just jeremy.net. And if you read digitally on Comixology, you can buy the whole series, issues 1 through 7. You can buy those digitally on Comixology as well. I figured it's a lot of links to throw out, but if you go to my the homepage of my channel, it'll have links to the Comixology page, my website, the the Amazon site, all the places where you can check it out if you want to buy a copy physically or digitally. So that is Morningstar. Let's see. Lego Studios mentions the anthology he's working on is ahead of production schedule. I'm glad to hear that. It's always good to be ahead of schedule. It's better than the alternative. And putting together an anthology is a big task. So I am impressed and humbled. I admire your fortitude because it's no small challenge. I've heard of the difficulties of wrangling artists when working on an anthology before, and in fact, I've participated in an anthology. My buddy Carl Alstetter helped organize. Him and Jamie Gamble and a few other creators. And it took a while to pull the whole thing together. There were some people that were going to have stories then dropped out. But it's a beautiful book. And in fact, that one I think is also available on Amazon. It's called Samurai. And I do have a story in that. Oh, and I guess people are drawing, which is what I was hoping, is that people would be drawing while I'm drawing. And Gaming Artist says, I'm in the middle of drawing a picture myself as well. So the thing that was on my mind, I was working on this page last night, and this is my character Gabrielle, the Archangel Gabriel. I wanted more female characters in the book, so I made her a woman. It's Gabrielle. And I already deleted the layer that had the previous version, but I drew her face and just really did not like it. So I just sat down and worked on it until I had a face that I did like. So well, no artist is ever completely happy with their own work, and they always see, I can always see more flaws and things that aren't quite right. But in general, I'm happier with this face than I was with what I had when I started. Now, the downside of this, not necessarily a downside, but the challenge I have is that the amount of detail that's on this, because I basically took this face here, if this were in ink, instead of being slightly rough digital pencils, this would be a finished panel. I mean, I could just convert this to black, but I'm still going to print it out and ink it because I want the actual pages to be traditional, the finished pages. That said, I kind of put more work into this. Like if you look at the level of finish of the rest of these pages, I generally don't do very tight pencils. One, I'm inking myself. Two, I'm not a particularly tight artist. What you're looking at in terms of this page that I focused on, other than the construction lines going across the nose and across the middle of the head, this is about as finished as my artwork gets. I tend to be kind of a little bit looser. So I also see some more folks in the chat. I see Roderick's in the chat. How you doing? Says he loves my work. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm glad. It's always nice to hear. And Lego Studio says, I've finished issue 1 and 2 of my anthology. It's an 8-issue series. I plan on giving all 8 issues away for free to anyone who wants it. You know what? Now's a great time to be giving away great work because a lot of people need something to take their mind off of what's going on. And some free comics are a great way to do it. So that is admirable. But what was I saying? I was talking about finish and being a loose artist. I tend not, the idea is that if I am going to go back and ink these pages anyway, then I try to really just put down what I need line-wise to give me the framework to hinge those finished ink drawings on top of. I don't necessarily want them to be super rendered, super detailed. And I find that part of it, I think, is still getting used to working digitally in the sense that if something isn't coming out right, I'm afraid to let it go. So I want to keep working on it until I'm all, okay, I'm actually happy with this panel. It looks like what I wanted it to look like. And that does mean to some degree, not overworking it in the sense that I'm making it look bad. Like I keep drawing and drawing until, it could have been a good drawing, but now I've just drawn well past that and now it's crap. The idea is about the efficiency of your use of time. and that if I know I'm going to ink it traditionally, and I'm going to spend most of my energy towards making that finished ink drawing look like the finished work, then why draw more than I have to in the layouts? Um, and I find that if I'm trying to draw and already, if I'm trying to ink and I've already drawn a lot of detail and I've really pushed the page to close to completion, I find that my inks actually come out worse because I haven't left myself anything to draw. So to a certain degree, I try to draw leaving out a lot of detail. And that way I still have something, when I come in, I'm not just inking. I really am drawing the page in ink. So I try to actually leave a fair amount for me to finish. And that is something that I'm still getting used to working digitally. I think that when I was doing my layouts on Vellum, I had a really good sense of what I needed in order to make a page that I could ink. Like I've got all the detail in there and not much more. And for some reason that balance in terms of how much I need has slightly shifted. And I really do feel like it's a calibration thing. It's just a matter of this is my first time doing digital layouts. And as I go, I will find that right balance of how much I need to draw versus just putting in that framework. So let's see, back to the comments real quick. See, American Swordfish is in the chat. And he says, Jeremy's style reminds me a little bit of Jock's. Dude, I love Jock. That is a high praise. That comparison, that made my day. In fact, just the other day, I bought the illustrated Dread screenplay. It's the one that Alex Garland made a couple years ago, starring screenplay as a pitch book. And I don't know if they had to go back in and do additional storyboards for production beyond that, but it's got a lot of Jock's character designs, sketches for scenes, and then it's basically you get to read Jock drawing a rough comic of that movie, of Dredd, and him, being a British artist, and I'm not sure how much Judge Dredd work he has drawn, but I do believe he's drawn, Dredd in the UK. I should probably go do a little research and see if I can find any of those, or if he actually has drawn the actual issues. But just the fact, the comparison between this and Jock, that's what I'm going for. It's good news. I'm happy to hear it. Yeah, Jock almost has like a digital Kent Williams feel to him in terms of his comic storytelling, which again, Kent Williams is another one who I would call an early influence of mine. I loved a lot of his early comic work, Blood, that DC Vertigo miniseries, Havoc, Wolverine Meltdown. That's another favorite classic. See, Iron Rock says, hoping all is well. Thank you. Yes, all is well, as well as it can be in this situation. Life has been relatively good. So, my family remains healthy. I remain healthy and, getting work done. So I hope that all is going well with you as well. Gaming Artist says, you're one of the best artists I've seen. Thank you for saying that. That's one of those compliments that I think it's hard for an artist to just say thank you and not say anything else, because the first instinct I have when someone says something as kind as what you just said is to negate it, to say, no, there's this artist and there's that artist, because I feel like I am critical of my own work. I'm grateful for people who see nice things in it, and appreciate it. So I'm very grateful for that. But when I look around at other artists that I admire and other artists that, maybe don't even have a YouTube channel, but I just happen to catch them on Instagram. There's so many great artists out there that I feel like I can't. It's hard to just say thank you, because in my mind I'm like, oh, there's so many people better than I am. But thank you. I'm just gonna say thank you. Let's see. Um, Lego Studio asks, what project are you doing after Morningstar? That is a really good question. I currently have 3 books that I am batting around, and I have only the loosest of outlines for each of them. So I actually need to go in and write. My plan is to just keep writing, rotating through the outlines for all 3, and whichever one feels the most finish, I will probably do first. Um, One is a sequel to my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. So it's continuing this. It's a psychological thriller about a man. He has visions he can't control. Um, he ends up in a very different place by the end of the story. And enough people have asked me what, what happens now, that it's worth exploring. The second story is a reinterpretation of an old Greek myth, and the third one is sort of oddly enough, it's a dystopian science fiction story, but it doesn't have anything to do with plagues or disease. And I think between the 3 of those, the third one, the dystopian story, actually it's kind of more of a socio-political thriller. Um, Kind of more along the lines of Logan's Run, except dealing with race, class, sexual orientation. Um, so it's a little bit more. It's a less shoot 'em up action, fighting and killing, and it's more probably. I would say, if anything, V for Vendetta is probably the closest inspiration that I can call right off the top of my head for that third story. So it's that kind of. It's like a political dystopian story. And one of the other things that I'm thinking about doing is doing visual development for this world, doing character designs, and maybe using the character designs, maybe making prints and posters out of ideas for covers. I think the idea is using that, fleshing out the world, and seeing how people respond to that artwork to decide which project to do. Like, let's say I do a series of like 4 prints of like theoretical covers for each of these stories, and I put like let's say I put those prints on sale, and for each story, see which stories, which prints people respond strongly to, and based on the ones that people respond strongly to, that may help me decide which one is the story I should actually do next. But really, I'm not sure which story I want to do, because I want to do all of them. So and that's just like right off the top. I mean, Lord knows the file I have of things that I want to draw next and write next is massive. So it's just a matter of sitting down and deciding, trying to find the sweet spot between what I want to do and what people are actually excited about and want to see from me. So Derek is in the chat. He says, dropping in late to watch you while cutting cheese. How y'all doing? So doing well, making some comics. Gaming Artist says, when I draw, I'm always down on myself, but I keep going anyway. You know what? That's the best attitude, and I think the best attitude in terms of keeping going. But the way I try to look at it is, instead of not necessarily being down on myself, when I say that I'm self-critical of my work, I try to think of it as, just because something I do, just because the artwork may be bad, it doesn't mean that I am bad. It means I tried something and failed. And so when I am self-critical of my work, I'm self-critical in the sense of, okay, I tried something, it failed. Where did I make mistakes, and how can I improve it? So I am always critical of myself, but I try to make it constructive criticism. I mean, it never helps to have somebody else. I wouldn't want somebody else to just come up to me and say, hey man, your work sucks. But if someone else came up to me and said, hey man, that head is a little lopsided and the eyes don't line up, maybe you should fix that. It might sting to have someone else call that out in my work if I didn't catch it myself, but it's still like, I'm like, you know what, you're right, thank you, I need to fix that. And I try to take that same attitude with myself and my personal criticisms. So when you mentioned that you try not to get down on yourself, and just that, even when you say you're down on yourself but you keep going, instead of framing it like I'm down on myself, I'm beating myself up, look at it like you are constantly trying to help yourself. Instead of removing the negativity from criticism and saying, it's like that thing where you're like, all right, this morning I'm gonna get up, I'm gonna do 30 push-ups. You get up and you're only able to do 15. Instead of saying, oh, I suck, you say, all right, I did 15. Tomorrow my goal is to do 16. That's the way I look at criticism. That instead of turning that negative voice in your head into something where it says, all right, identify problems and identify what I can do to get just a tiny bit better. And I listened to the podcast Comic Lab. I'm actually a supporter on their Patreon. And one of the quotes that Brad Geiger says a lot on there is, it is impossible to get worse at something you practice every day. So that is the way I try to look at this. I'm practicing every day and trying to improve. And right now I'm trying to figure out the best way. This back that I'm drawing right here, I put a couple of cross-axis lines, which are lines that are supposed to be going, in the direction. They're going across the contour. They're going counter to the contour line that's outside the figure. But I want to get that sense of the jacket wrapping around this guy's back. And I was sitting there trying to figure out what's the best way to do it. And then I just realized, oh, wait a minute. I kind of did it with the cross contours. If I go in here and I erase these cross contours, but then go in and try to use those contours instead as folds, so that as opposed to, trying to use them as folds. Try to do it like the fabric is bending across his back like this. That might give me a little bit more of the feel that I want. So let's see, some more comments in the chat. Lego Studio says, would you like copies of my comics when they're finished? Yes, please. I'd love to read some of your comics. And Gaming Artist says, what is your art style? That's a very, very long question. The short answer is traditional comic book illustrative. So probably more on the lines of, what I'm going for is Andrew Loomis figure drawing in narrative storytelling. I try to going for simple, figurative illustration a la Alex Toth. I don't know if you're familiar with Alex Toth, but if you're not, you should look him up. I mean, a lot of people know him for designing a lot of animation characters, doing Space Ghost. But before he worked in animation, he's done so many great comic book illustrations. I've got a few collections of his work, and I've got this really great book called the Alex Toth Doodle Book, where he was corresponding with an aspiring artist through physical letters, and he would illustrate the letters. They were full of sketches and concepts. And the guy who put that book together, John Hitchcock. He saved all those and he put them together in a book, and it's great. There's so much you can learn about drawing from that particular book. But I would not say that my work looks like Alex Toth. I would say that I aspire to look like Alex Toth, in the sense that he is very simple, but he's deceptively simple. He draws everything that you need to understand the story and not a line more. So he's efficient, dynamic, great staging, great composition. I wish I could get to where he's at. I find a lot of times when I'm putting extraneous detail in on a page, it's because I'm trying to hide flaws in my drawing. And that was why I was mentioning earlier about putting too much detail and bringing a drawing to a finish in the layout stage. It's not necessarily that I want to be simplistic. I just want to, and I don't think there's anything wrong with having a lot of detail. You look at somebody like, say, Philip Tan, very, very detailed, beautiful pencils, beautiful rendered. He's somebody who's a very detailed artist who I love. Um, for me, it's simply, see, he already knows how to draw. And when I know what you're saying, you look at mine and you say, obviously I know how to draw. And it's not having the fundamentals to draw something and people can tell what that object is not the same as mastering draftsmanship, being able to really, really communicate with line to create not just an object, but to create the character of that object. Is this a cartoony object? Is this thing like drawing a hat and being able to make people tell the difference between a hat that's old and a hat that's new, a jacket that's new with a jacket that's weathered, drawing a man's face and having it feel like you can feel the age in them if they're an old man, or drawing a woman who is kind of bookish and nerdy but tough versus a woman who is like a Wonder Woman type Amazon who is very tough versus someone who's kind of seductive and sultry. These are all things that go way beyond actually drawing an object or drawing a person. And that's the next level down of drawing is conveying not just the object, but the context of that object, the being of that object, the essence of that object. And these are things that I feel like I do not think that I am bad at them, but I think that I am still very much in the early stages of truly gaining that kind of mastery. I would say that I can draw, but I have not by any means mastered drawing. And that's one of the reasons why when I talk about, other artists out there that are better than I am, what I mean, and I don't think that it's necessarily healthy to sit around comparing yourself to other artists just to say I suck. But what I look at when I look at artists and I say these other artists out there are, are masters at their craft where I'm not, it's that they seem to have a much better grasp at that level of expression that I'm talking about, being able to express all those different layers of visual storytelling. Let me scroll back to the chat here real quick because I see some folks in there. Let's see. Bomac Draws says the third story sounds like 1984. You know what? And that is a good comparison. I enjoy 1984. I haven't read it in a long time, but I also really like the Terry Gilliam movie Brazil, which again is pretty much doing a 1984. And 1984, Brave New World. It's kind of like, actually, I think Brave New World, which I haven't read. I think there's more drugs going on in that book. But yes, that's kind of the tone I'm going for. And Oleski says, I'm here for this positive energy. I'm happy to hear it. I hope you're enjoying it. And let's see here. I see EA2468 says, how are you? April Fools, I was joking. Yeah, we missed April Fools, but you know what? It's always time for some April Foolsness. He said, drawing is listening. Drawing is haram in Islam. He says, stop drawing. Let's see. He says, do you like other art styles? Necessarily, to be honest, I tend to enjoy art. People who can do things that I am incapable of doing. The more different it is from what I can do, the more impressed I am by it. For instance, like Dave McKean, who again I consider him an influence, but that's more in terms of his line work storytelling. Like his book Cages, I very much love, but most people know him for his photo collaging covers. Like a lot of the covers he did, pardon me, for Neil Gaiman's Sandman. He did the majority of covers for that series, and that is not the photo manipulation, the photo collage, photo illustrations that he does, where he's got like sculpture and illustration and all of these things combined in there, those things are not something that I would ever choose to do art wise, but I'm very, very impressed by them. I really, really do enjoy, his work. There's a lot of other artists that aren't necessarily comic book artists that I enjoy. Gustav Klimt. I think a lot of illustrators look at Klimt as an influence because he does such great storytelling, narrative feel in his work. Alphonse Mucha is another one who, you can look at somebody like Adam Hughes, and you can see the Mucha influence in his work. And he is another great, both Adam Hughes and Mucha. But those are artists who I don't draw like them, but I very much enjoy their work. And for me, it doesn't really matter if the work looks like something that I would or wouldn't make. All that matters is that it's good. For instance, I am not necessarily somebody who watches a lot of anime, and I don't read a ton of manga. But Masamune Shiro, the guy who does Ghost in the Shell and Appleseed, he's one of my favorites. I can't think of the name of it right now, but there's a Korean manhwa series that I've got the first volume of that I really love, and that book I think it's not much point in me mentioning it because I can't even remember the title of it, but it's just one that I held on to because it was some of the best illustration I'd seen in a long time. So for me, it doesn't matter whether it's a manga style, more of a clean line, open line style like Milo Manara. I really like his work, and his style is very, very different from my work. The late, great Juan Jimenez, who we've lost during this coronavirus epidemic, he's another fantastic artist who my work is very different from. I love his work. So yeah, for me, I just kind of love art and drawing in general. Drawing and painting and sculpture. There's a lot. I don't necessarily follow a ton of sculptures. I don't follow a ton of contemporary sculptures. Although I listen to Chet Zar's Dark Art Society podcast, and him having worked in visual effects, he knows a lot of sculptors, and he's had some sculptors on, like Paul Komoda. That's the first one that pops in my mind. Because, there's a whole variety of sculptors that he's had as guests on his show that I'd never been exposed to before, but I'm, super impressed by it. I think they do great work. So let's see here. Someone seems to think that I am going to go to hell. Now I wonder if that is because I draw a comic about Lucifer. Well, first off, go back and read the actual book, because you'll see that Lucifer isn't a hero in this. It's a morality story about how someone who starts off beautiful and great becomes dark and evil. So you might learn something from reading that. Let's see. Gaming Artist is Happy Easter, and Ion Rock says, I really like your art, Jeremy. And I appreciate it, man. You've always been quite the supporter. So I appreciate it. Thank you. American Swordfish says, it takes 10 to 20 years to master your style in comics, even for some people. Even more for some people. Sorry, you're reading while I'm drawing. And I realize now the tough part here is this last panel at the bottom it's a crowd scene. Just to give you a little context, what happened is the guy with the knife to his throat snuck into to Gabrielle's bedroom in the middle of the night to kill her. And she puts a knife to his throat because, she's kind of a ninja badass. She sneaks out of bed and catches him. And then he turns and she sees the first of the demon angel hybrids. So Lucifer kind of had brought an alliance between his rebel angels and the demons, and they're now a bunch of angel demon hybrids. And the first one, this is her encountering the first one. But then you cut to the outside of her house and you just see all of these demons, surrounding it. So now here, this again is that question of detail and how much finish I want to put in. Because first off, these are a bunch of small figures. They shouldn't be super detailed. Secondly, I just need to figure out how much detail I need to put in order to make this page work. This is probably another good time for me to flip the page back. One of my previous processes was I would draw the I'm trying to think of the words, the proper words. No, I used to draw on vellum instead of a light box, so I could see through the paper. And then what I would do is I would do my roughs and then would flip them back, because when you look at the mirror image of your drawing, you see all these mistakes that you've made. And it's like having someone. It's like, honestly, flipping your drawings is like having an art teacher right there next to you. A lot of people don't like doing it because then they see all of their mistakes and like, ugh, I can't believe that's all there. I don't like looking at that. But if you look at it literally, like if you could just invisibly have somebody appear and just say, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, fix these things, your drawing will look good. That's what flipping your drawings are. It's literally having someone right there to tell you that. And I always have to give credit to my buddy Carl Altstetter, because he's the one who hounded me until I started doing it. And once I did, I was like, oh, dude, you're right. This makes my work so much better. But it used to be that I would draw, then flip it, and then make corrections in a different color. Usually I would make my original drawings in red pencil, then make my corrections in traditional graphite. And now that I'm working digital, I'm just flipping back and forth as I go. So, hang on, let me see here. Comments in the chat, because I think I missed a few. Felipe says, if you didn't know how to draw and you wanted to become a comic artist, what specific steps would you take to get a good level? I would, if you can find a place to take figure drawing classes where you're actually sitting in front of a live model and drawing, that will help you tremendously. I think that's just for learning to draw the human figure, which if you're drawing comics, you're going to have to learn to draw the human figure. And learn to draw the human figure is very, very difficult. It's very time consuming. But I have gotten to the point now where I actually really enjoy, even on days when the figure drawings aren't coming out well and it's frustrating, I enjoy that challenge. So one is drawing from the human figure. And if you cannot find figure drawing classes, then get some good anatomy books and do studies from the books. I even though it's not an anatomy book, I do recommend Andrew Loomis, Figure Drawing for All It's Worth, George Bridgman, The Human Machine. Those are all very good books for learning the basics of human anatomy. It's another book that I bring out when I'm doing figure drawings a lot. Let's see here. The Atlas of Human Anatomy for the Artist by Peck. This book is one that's a regular tried and true standby for me. I use this a lot. Let's see. Now, the other part, probably the more important part than figure drawing, is storytelling. And learning storytelling is a lifetime visually. You can use that as an opportunity to practice both your storytelling, and you can just say, all right, I can accomplish what I want without the figure drawings being good. So you can just practice and do figure drawings that may not be as good as you want while you're doing that. Now, a couple of books that I would recommend to help you in terms of storytelling. One, I would say the highest on that list is Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics. That book is my very first go-to. For me, even more than Will Eisner's instructional books, even more than How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, I would say that book, I think, is one of the best books on sequential storytelling, the power of telling stories in comics. That said, I would probably put Drawing Comics the Marvel Way as a quick second behind that. I think there's a lot to learn from those two books. And I could rattle off a ton of other books that I have about storytelling and books that I've read, books that I could recommend. But I think that with between those four books, um, Andrew Loomis's Figure Drawing for All It's Worth, any of George Bridgman's book, in fact, the complete guide, George Bridgman's Complete Guide to Figure Drawing is probably the best one for that because it's got kind of the best of all of his books. So I would say those two figure drawing books, and then Understanding Comics and How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. Those four books, you could literally spend a year studying each book, and at the end of 4 years, you've had like comics storytelling 101. So just start with those books, read them, study, and the best thing you can also do is start making short comics. Maybe make mini comics, like little stapled, or maybe just a web comic that you want to put online. But just start making short stories, because the other thing about comics is you can read all this information, absorb it, intellectualize it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're gonna it doesn't necessarily mean that you're gonna be able to draw comics just because you've read a lot about the process of making comics. You really learn how to do comics by making comics. I still feel like I have a ton to learn, but that's because I've really only done my graphic novel and then this 8-issue series. I've done a bunch of other little short stories before that, kind of to get myself to the point where I was even ready to draw a whole graphic novel and to draw a whole comic series. But I think that just the act of sitting down and making comics is the best way to learn. So the books are really just to give you the foundation and give you the tools so that you can start practicing, start trying, and to help you figure out what your storytelling voice is, what your artistic style is. And don't worry that much about finding style, because much like a gaming artist asked earlier in terms of like my style and what I think it is, I think to a degree you can predetermine what your style is, but for the most part, you just kind of draw how you draw. You can make it better and you can make it worse. And some people are very good stylistic mimics, so I don't want to discount that. But I think for a lot of people, you just start making drawings, and your style is what comes out when you are not trying to actively look like anyone else. Or it's what happens when you're trying to look like someone else and you fail. But the point being is, I think that other than some people who are natural mimics, and those people are out there, I think a lot of artists don't really have much control over their style. They just draw what they draw. So you have control over the quality of it, but in terms of what category you fit into, whether you're a cartoony artist, whether you're a photorealistic artist, like for instance, I remember hearing an interview with Will Eisner talking with another comic creator, and they were talking about the difference between Bigfoot and Littlefoot comics. Bigfoot being cartoony, like Popeye and Calvin and Hobbes, and like newspaper strips. And Littlefoot being superhero comics, romance comics, drama comics, things that are more realistic. And Will Eisner put forth the theory, and I don't necessarily think that he's wrong, that in order to be a good Littlefoot cartoonist, you have to be a good Bigfoot cartoonist. Meaning that in order to draw superhero comics, romance, drama, adventure, you have to be able to cartoon to a certain degree, because those other genres require in this world, even if this world is a really weird, strange one. I mean, to that degree, agreeing with that means I am, to a certain implication, saying that it's worth studying cartooning. But I think it's worth studying all different disciplines of visual arts. So, let's see here. American Swordfish is in there. He's all biatch. Let's see here. Gaming Artist says, do you like anime, and what animes are you familiar with? He also says, you're a really inspirational artist. Thank you. Again, I really appreciate that. I appreciate the kind words. Amaris also says, hi. Hi, how you doing? Glad you were able to make it. Let's see here. Anime. Um, I love Cowboy Bebop. I haven't watched it in a long time, but I bought the series, and it is both Samurai Bebop. I mean, not Samurai Bebop. Both Cowboy Bebop and Samurai Champloo are two of my favorites. I really enjoy those. Other anime. Other anime. Well, I mean, Miyazaki, that goes without saying. He's the Walt Disney of Japan. And in fact, I was just reading recently. I read the first volume. This isn't recently. This was actually several months ago. This was last year that I finished it. But Miyazaki has a memoir, a two volume memoir. And the first one is called Starting Points, and the second volume is called Turning Points. I own both, and I finished Starting Points a while back. Turning Points is still by my bedside, waiting for me to read it. I just haven't made time for it. But Miyazaki is another one. Princess Mononoke, My Neighbor Totoro, Spirited Away. I don't own. I do own. I only own a couple of Miyazaki films though. Spirited Away. I bought My Neighbor Totoro specifically because my wife had never seen it, and I thought she would really, really enjoy it. And Totoro is so cute, and she did. I was right. Spirited Away, Totoro, and Princess Mononoke. I don't think I've seen Howl's Moving Castle, but I have not seen Kiki's Delivery Service. But yeah, I like Miyazaki. Trying to think of what else, what other anime? Because it's not that I dislike anime. It's just I don't necessarily make it my goal to seek out. I don't really seek out any particular genre of film or television. I just try to, if something interesting comes my way, I try to check it out. Like, for instance, for ages, people have been telling me that I need to watch Attack on Titan, and I still haven't made time to watch that. But it's on my radar. It's something I want to see. Speaking of contemporary anime, even though it's written by a British writer, I have not started watching Castlevania yet. But I love Warren Ellis as a writer. He's probably one of my writing influences, and I haven't made time to start watching Castlevania yet. And this is one of the other curses of making comics, is the more time you spend creating, the less time you have for consuming. So I really don't watch as many movies and read as many books as I would like, because I do feel like as a creative person, I need to constantly feed that. I should always be watching stories and reading books to grow sort of my creative well of inspiration. But I also find it hard to draw while I have movies on in the background. Podcasts are no problem, so I listen to a ton of podcasts. I usually have them playing in the background. But when it comes to having movies on, generally the types of things I enjoy watching are things that are very visually involving. Like, I like the Coen brothers, I like David Fincher, I like very visually dynamic storytellers, and they tend to make stories where I really, in order to get everything that's going on, you kind of have to watch every frame, and there's just little subtle movements and little looks that a character will make that are really, really engaging. I mentioned Alex Garland the other day. He's got a new TV show that's on FX called Devs, and it's a show that, in terms of what's happening, the pace is very measured. It's not fast paced, it's very slow, but it's visually incredibly engaging. You kind of have to sit there and just take in all of the visuals. And sometimes, an important moment is just sitting there watching a character breathe and watching them emotionally process something. And these are the kind of things where if I just had it playing in the background, I would be missing more than half of the story. Let's see. I see Johnson's in the chat, and he says, "I also draw." Well, thanks for popping in. Glad to hear it. Yeah, so in terms of watching a lot of movie, a lot of TV, a lot of, whether it's manga and anime or Western storytelling or British or foreign films, and speaking of Japanese storytellers, I have been meaning for ages to work my way through all of Akira Kurosawa's films. Because at this point, I think I've only seen Seven Samurai, Ran, and I think I've seen one other movie of his. Um, but Kurosawa is, he's a filmmaker who has influenced many Western filmmakers. Um, he's somebody who, even more than watching anime, I want to make time for watching a bunch of Kurosawa films, and I just have not had the time. So, that's just sort of the constant battle that I fight on a personal level, trying to both find the time to continue to produce work and finding the time to grow my library of references to learn by watching people that are making great work. I think that that's what happens a lot of times is you go and you see a film or you read a book and you see something that someone else does that's amazing. You say, huh, I wonder what it's like for me to try that. And maybe you try to copy that storytelling technique. And for me, it doesn't necessarily feel like, as long as there's a difference between aping another comic book artist's work and aping their style and just redoing theirs versus looking at it and saying, all right, what would this look like in my own visual language, my own storytelling sensibility? I think that there is a lot to learn by trying to imitate people that you admire. Not for this. And one, if you give credit where credit's due, you can put a little note in the beginning of the story saying this is inspired by this creator or inspired by this writer, and then try to do your story. As long as you're not just doing a one for one exactly what they do. But let's say you're really inspired by Scott Snyder's American Vampire, and you say this is a vampire story about a vampire living in like the 1920s or living at a different point in history. And maybe you do a short story, and it has maybe the premise that he has, but it's done in your own way. It has your own voice, but you acknowledge, this inspired me to make it, but my verse story is different. And focus on how it is that your work is different than theirs. So use what inspires you as the starting point, and find your own voice within it. Or maybe it's a matter of you may find a great Alfred Hitchcock visual storytelling technique, but you may use it in a romantic comedy or use it in a space story. Because Hitchcock never did, as far as I know, because I still haven't seen every Hitchcock film, but Hitchcock never did science fiction. So the idea of taking a very Hitchcock feel and setting it in deep space or setting it at the bottom of the ocean, those are other ways in which you can take influences from different media and use it to grow on your own creatively. Because artwork is not created in a vacuum. As much as we like to, people, say that they're originals, they're coming up with this new, unique idea. Art references other forms of art. Art is kind of all interconnected. We're all influenced by the things that we see, the art we grew up with, the artwork that we experience on a daily basis, the books we read, the films we watch, the music we listen to. It all comes together. Let's see here. Jay King's in the chat. He says, good day, brother. And people, stay safe. I agree. Everyone stay safe. Wash your hands. Gaming Artist says, I like Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball superhero. Let's see. No, it says, I like Dragon Ball, Super Dragon Ball, My Hero Academia, Boku. Let me see. My Hero Academia, no. Boku no, My Hero Academia's One True. Let's see, True Heroes, One Punch Man, All Naruto's, Death Note, Pokemon Attack, Pokemon Attack on Titan, and Legend of Zelda. It's hard to read because there's no commas in it. So I apologize for butchering what you were putting in a list of your manga and anime influences. It was just hard for me to follow because there were no commas there. But no, it sounds like you've got a pretty wide variety of manga and anime that you're into. And yeah, I think it's great to be influenced by all forms of art and, pardon me, a little burp there, and creators around the world. So it sounds like you've got a pretty good list of influences there. Let's see. I'm just going to erase this guy's head. It wasn't working for me. It wasn't breaking the profile enough. I wanted to get something that has a little... Let me actually maybe point this creature's head up. So some of the demons are kind of on four legs, like animals, and some of the demons are on two legs, like humans. And I try to mix it up. And this guy, I'm gonna kind of make him feel a little bit more, almost like a horse. Just manipulating him just enough that he has more interesting silhouette. I think I should maybe drop this other leg back a little bit more. They've also got weird sort of distorted distorted limbs. Some of them have super long limbs, some of them have super short limbs. Some of them have maybe really long arms and really short legs. I mean, they're just all sorts of weird, crazy, distorted creatures. Which is funny. That was something that I learned kind of halfway through doing this story. Originally, I designed them so that all the demons were very much just humanoid looking, clawed, big teeth, but almost like a ninja with claws and giant teeth growing out of their face. It's kind of how they originally were all built. And then I realized that I had really missed an opportunity for creating a sense of variation in the world by just exploring all these different versions of the demons and really playing with their body types. I think I realized that when I was rereading another book that I consider a storytelling influence, even though I don't draw like him, but he's another person who I greatly admire, even though I don't look like, is Guy Davis. He has a fantastic creator-owned series called The Marquis, like Marquis de Sade. And I think it was originally published through Dark Horse, but it's his own property that he owns. I eventually got the collected trade of that book, and it's one of my favorites. It is a fantastic surreal series about a man who is fighting a bunch of demons, but he doesn't know for sure whether he really is seeing demons or whether he is just having a weird delusion and he's actually insane. But it's a great series, and he just has there's so many amazing creatures on every single page. I mean, he's also known for drawing a very long run on BPRD, the Hellboy spinoff, where there's tons of monsters and creatures, and that's another thing that I have not had time to read, but very much want to read. But back to the Marquis. There's demons throughout the series, and I remember just going back for one day for some reason, just flipping through it, and I was like, oh my god, like on every single page there's tons of creature designs, and it was just so amazing and impressive. And I realized that I was really wasting an opportunity in my comic by not pushing the creature design a little bit more and adding more creatures. So based on that, I went in and just started adding more creatures. Now the last thing I'm going to do, I'm actually just about done with this page. I'm just going to go in and draw a little bit of white underneath places where it's going to be hard for me to see when I'm printing this in blue line. So I'm basically going to go in and put some white behind this demon right here. Hang on. Oh wait, no, I'm going to have to... Oh, because the building is there, so I'm going to need to put... Oh, that's going to be challenging. No, it's not. I'll just make a mask. I don't need this layer. Delete. Alpha mask. No, that's not what I want. That's alpha lock. Just create a mask that I can mask out parts of the building that are behind these demons. Let's see here. I see Iron Rock says you need to read Naruto. I know Naruto and One Punch Man have both been highly recommended to me. I do need to get to them. Honestly, you know what I'm reading right now? I'm reading Rick Remender's run on Uncanny X-Force. I really like his work, and it's a really dark take on X-Men characters. So like a mutant hit squad going out and doing like wet work. Reminds me a lot of like the later seasons of Torchwood in terms of like where the characters are just like supernatural, superpowered characters dealing with really horrible situations and horrible moral dilemmas. Um, Gaming Artist says he'll be right back. Hyena Vaughn says, hey Jeremy, glad to see you're being safe. Thank you. Glad to hear it. Hope you're being safe as well. And my boy Vince Moore is in the chat. What up, Vince? He says, by the way, I posted a fresh link with a tag in the group for this stream. So thanks. I appreciate that. Let's see here. Sophia Bloodline says, Jeremy, which of the topics do you think is harder to draw? Hands or clothing wrinkles? I will say hands. Hands down. Hands are more difficult. I have taken classes. Again, I frequently mention the figure drawing instructor I've been studying with, Carl Ganas. He oddly enough has classes in both of those topics. He has a class specifically called Drawing Heads, Hands, and Feet, and he also has a class on drawing drapery and the costumed figure. And these are classes that I have not just taken once. I take the classes every time he offers them. So at least once a year, I am focusing solely on drawing cloth and drapery, or I'm focusing on drawing hands when you're along with feet and heads. But those things, both of them are difficult enough that they require their own focused study. So I'm not saying that drapery is easier, but with hands, it's odd. Hands, much like faces, are things that we look at all the time. With a head drawing, you'll look at someone's face, and even if it's just the nose is too narrow, or the eyes are just a little bit off, or the cheekbones feel like they're not as high as they should be, or they're lower than they should be, you can look at a head, and even if you don't know specifically what's wrong, you're like, that drawing looks funky. You may not be able to identify it. The same thing that's true of faces, because we're staring at faces all the time, is also true of hands. We look at them all the time. So when something's off, why is it wrong? It's like, oh, one knuckle is facing the wrong direction, or the fingernails are too short, or you put the knuckles in the wrong place, so the finger might be the drawing hands are challenging. But when it comes to drawing drapery, I think the reason why I think it's easier is because once you learn the basics, it really is a matter of applying those fundamentals to every drapery that you draw. It's mastering those fundamentals that's the hard part. But again, there's good books on it. Bridgman has a book on drawing drapery and costume. Bern Hogarth has a book on it, and I don't find that book as helpful because much like a lot of Bern Hogarth, I know a lot of people love Bern Hogarth. I still have my copy of Dynamic Anatomy. It was the first anatomy book I ever bought. The reason why Hogarth gets a lot of criticism from illustrators who are more realistic is because he draws all of his figures so that all of the muscles are flexed at the same time. So you don't get the fact that, like, if your biceps are flexed, even if you're really muscular, if this side is flexed, the underside is relaxed. And Hogarth, in order to make all of the muscles visible, kind of draws all the muscles kind of quasi-flexed at the same time. So all the figures have sort of a puffed up balloon feel to them. That does not mean that I think that Bern Hogarth is a bad artist. He can draw circles around. He can draw circles around a lot of artists, myself included. I'm just saying that that's the criticism that I have heard told to me from other artists that study figure drawing, of why they're critical of Hogarth's work. Not his illustration work. Really, it's critical of his educational work. And I would say that overemphasis that's talked about in his figures and his anatomy, I think that's also true in terms of drapery. It is his book on dynamic drapery, because I have that book, but it really feels like it's the concept of drapery. It's of actual cloth and how it really does weave in and out. I haven't gone back and done a deep dive into it enough to really say there's still things in the book that I value. I haven't gotten rid of the books. That means I obviously still think there's something in it that's interesting and worthwhile to look at. But I will say that, I would probably start with Bridgman's book on drapery, and there probably are other books on drapery and drawing clothing besides that. I mean, most of my education on that has come really from Carl Ganas and taking his class. Let me see, where are we at here? We're a little bit past noon, and I've pretty much finished up this page. So we're kind of right on schedule here. Then it doesn't make sense for me to start a new page since we're pretty much done and at the point of wrapping up. So let me just answer the last couple of chat questions in the chat here, and then we'll call it a day. Okay. So let's see here. Jay King says, always great lessons, brother. I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm happy to share. Iron Rock says, Shonen Jump is a $2 a month access to their entire library. Again, it's not it's not about the money. It's about actually having the time to read those books. I know they're great books. I know they're really enjoyable, and I know that they've been really influential on you. I have a lot of other stuff that I want to... You know what? I'll tell you this right now. This is what's sitting just off to the side of my desk. And a Kyle Baker graphic novel. Kyle Baker's Benevolence. A friend got me this for a birthday gift. And I have this sitting here. I have not had a chance to open it yet. It's just sitting there looking at me waiting to be read. I've also got... It's not a book to read, but I've got Structura 3, The Art of Sparth. He's a concept artist, did a ton of concept artwork on Halo. I've got this book sitting here by my table. Let's see here. The Etherington Brothers. I've got their Think When You Draw books, Volume 1 and 2. I backed their last Kickstarter and got these 2 books. If you follow their blog at all, the Etherington Brothers blog, they have great tutorials, just one-page tutorials of just how to draw so many different things. I need to study these things and improve my craft. I'm studying just as much as you guys are. These are books that I have to read. I've got, let's see, Brian and Christy Miller from Hi-Fi Color. I've got their Hi-Fi Color for comics so I can get better at doing color, both for digital painting, for comic covers, just learning color better and working digitally in color. These are all things I have just laying here that I have not opened yet because I want to, so I've got so much stuff to read. So it's not that I don't appreciate the recommendations, because I very much do, but I've got a crap ton of stuff that got a crap ton of stuff to read that I haven't had a chance to read on top of that. So someday I will read Naruto, someday I will read One Punch Man and One Piece. I just don't know when I'm going to get to them. Let's see. Vince Moore. Oh, this is a mention of science fiction and Hitchcock. Vince Moore, the movie Life Pod was based on Hitchcock's Lifeboat. So that was a science fiction take on a Hitchcock thriller. That's exactly what I was talking about. Thank you, Vince. Yeah, taking something that's done, another creator's visual aesthetic or a story concept and placing it in a new location and making it your own. Sophie or Bloodline says, Jeremy, if you ever have time, please watch the anime Hunter x Hunter. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. If you're looking for great world building and storytelling, character development, I will definitely, I'll check that out. I'll put that on my list. I'm not sure when I'll get to watch it, but I'll put it on the list. And also, when you said Hunter x Hunter, it also reminded me of Vampire Hunter D. I can't believe I forgot Vampire Hunter D. I haven't watched it in a long time, but that's also another great one that I really enjoy. Hyena Vaughn says Jeff Watts hates Hogarth's books as well. It's funny. I've never taken any classes at the Watts Atelier, but I can remember years ago, like maybe 20 years ago, I went to San Diego Comic Con one year, and I got to sit in on a great workshop he did there. He just did a figure drawing demo there. That is something I would actually like to do. Is maybe take one of the Watts Atelier intensives where they have like maybe 2 weeks, or you're there for like just a week, just to study. Because I really should study from a lot of different instructors. Because I really do believe that every instructor has something to offer. It's just a matter of you know learning from as many people as possible, and then using all of that knowledge to build yourself into something that's new and different, and a gestalt of all these other influences. But Jeff Watts, I definitely enjoy the YouTube videos he's put up, both his interviews with him and his other instructors, as well as the stuff that he teaches. Let's see. Johnny Fitz says hello, and Iron Rock says, the thing about reading the Shonen Jump, he says, it's about not taking up space in your home, getting it digitally. Yes, yeah, good point. Yeah, I actually have been reading a lot more books digitally just because I'm running out of physical space. So yeah, those are when I can make some time to read Naruto and some Shonen Jump stuff. I definitely will. All right, so this has been a great live stream. You guys have had some great questions and some great conversations. I really appreciate everyone showing up, hanging out, spending time. So thank you again. If you enjoy these videos, you'd like to support this channel for as little as $2 a month. It's a pay what you want subscription on Patreon. So you can put in $2, $5, $10. You can change it, raise it, lower it, whatever you like. There's a bunch of digital goodies on there as well. I've got some digital wallpapers, like my my Wonderland Nightmare series that I had been working on for the past few months. I posted wallpapers of all of those, mobile wallpapers on there for my patrons. You can go and check that out. That is at patreon.com/GERIMI. There is my newsletter if you want to see what else I'm up to and what I'm working on. I post that monthly. You can go to newsletter.jeremy.net. And again, if you'd like to buy physical copies or read on Amazon Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. Guys, thank you so much. That's it for now. Go be creative.